We live in a visually chaotic world, don't we? I mean, you really, everywhere we go, we see so much visual material coming at us, bombarding us from all directions, that it's really quite amazing. What's really funny is every sign, every billboard, every bus placard you see, every label in the grocery store is someone's design project. And at that point that we see that particular project, that particular designer thought it was good enough. Was it? That's an interesting question. And I like to look at the broad world of design and ask myself, is that really good enough? Did they really finish the job here? So we're going to talk about how to learn from looking at the world around us and how to see good design and bad design. We know good design when we see it, but do we know how to verbalize it? What is it about good design that makes it good, and bad design that makes it bad? In fact, even when you go see movies, you know a good movie when you see it. You walk out and you ask yourself, that movie was great, but do you really know why?
You know, I can say for design, I don't know. And so I would like to have some tools to help me do that, because I look at this blank page and I don't know where to start.
Yeah, there's really two aspects here. One is living a critical practice. It's walking through the world and paying attention to what is good writing, good design, good public speaking. And the second is, once you begin to think about that and you're being critical, modeling your own work after work you appreciate.
Yeah, and what really helps is a vocabulary. And for designers, establishing a vocabulary, knowing about things that guarantee failure, guarantee success, being able to verbalize what those are, first best step toward being a good graphic designer.
I agree, and I just want to add that sometimes that vocabulary is very personal. You know, not everyone is a pro like you did, right? Not everyone has read the material and really thought about it, but every single person can develop their own vocabulary for measuring what's good, works for them, and what isn't good and doesn't work for them. You don't have to really be a scholar of writing or of design or public speaking. You just have to be mindful about what's going on around you.
It's true. I've got my own vocabulary. Other designers have theirs. It's very, very true. You know, the world is teaching us about graphic design every waking moment. It's our job to learn from it. Take a look at these annual reports. I'm using annual reports here because I want to compare apples to apples when it comes to design efforts. So take a look at these with me. What are you seeing? When you see some of these, You might be telling yourself, that's a beautiful report. That's not so beautiful. What's your initial reaction? And what is the reaction when you've looked and thought about it for a minute? What is it about good design that makes itself apparent? And how immediate is it? And how open is it to analysis? What goes right and what goes wrong? Did you notice anything in looking at those annual report covers? Were there any commonalities in the ones you liked and in the ones you disliked? Look at them again and see if there are certain things about the ones you felt were especially good and the ones that you felt were not good or maybe even bad. Were there common things? Were there things that you could say about the good ones and the bad ones that would help you develop your own design vocabulary? During this course, I would like you to look at virtually everything you see as a critic. Magazine covers, websites, business cards, billboards, product labels. Learn to be a critic and learn to ask yourself, do I like that and why? Does that not work and why? That's your first step toward being a good designer, learning to look, analyze, think, and to develop a vocabulary. So hopefully you'll be looking at lots of design as you take this course. I hope you do. As you do and you're developing your own vocabulary, learning to think about why you like certain things and other things leave you feeling cold, I will share with you some of the things that I think we can be looking for. See what you think. Is there a clear message? Is there a dominant feel or theme? Is there a sense that the thing is balanced? Does it feel like there's too much light or not enough light? Does it feel too dark? Does it feel too heavy? Does it feel too colorful? Does it feel organized? Is there an obvious portal or target? Do I know where to look first when I look at this particular piece? Does it feel polished? Does it feel confident? Let's talk about each one of these. Let's look at our design projects again, the annual report covers, and ask yourself, referring to this list, if you're seeing these things in play. Is there a clear message? When you look at this annual report cover, do you feel there's a clear message? Do you feel there's a dominant feel or theme? Does this feel like a balanced design? Do things appear organized? Is there an obvious portal or target? Does the piece feel polished? And does the piece feel confident? You'll find that you're already quite the expert in graphic design. It's simply a matter of slowing down and looking more closely.
Well, it's funny, Dave. Inspiration's a funny thing because we tend to think of inspiration as magic. Like you're walking down the street and all of a sudden you thunderbolt, boom! Or we think of real creativity as purely originality. Like you're brilliant because you've come up with something no one else has thought about. But in fact, inspiration is a process of looking out at the world and thinking, how are you going to make a statement? What little modification can you make that will bring your own personality, your own inspiring sense of self to a piece of design or a piece of writing or just to talking?
Well, you know, I play music, and I can't imagine playing music without listening to music. It doesn't happen. You literally can't create in a vacuum.
Well, I love this idea that being brilliant or being inspirational isn't necessarily something that you're just born with. It's something that it's a habit you can adopt, right? You can find this brilliance in the world and absorb it yourself and then make it your own.
Make it your own. That's what inspiration
Well,
is.
the key is knowing when to look and where to look. There are places to look for inspiration that will guarantee that your work looks like everyone else's, or to look for inspiration aggressively and to think about how to take things that you see in the real world and make your work look unique and fresh and compelling.
Welcome back to Teach English Now. In the next few videos, we're going to talk about one of the fundamental problems with classroom language instruction and what you can do to help solve it. The problem is time. In the past 10 years, I have trained English teachers from Peru, Mexico, Korea, Japan, China, Iraq, and more, and the problem is always the same. Teachers do not have enough time in class to help learners master a language. In the current academic structure, in almost all parts of the world, English is taught as a class subject, like any other. Now, why is this a problem? Well, the fact is that academic institutions don't seem to recognize what you already know very well, that language is not just learned, it is acquired. So institutions, high schools, junior highs, colleges, typically give teachers a 1-hour class, just like you would for math, history, or science, every day. But by treating language as if it were a learned subject, students are not given enough opportunity to practice the language and get comfortable with it. I call this the 5-hour problem of language learning. There are many things that you can do to solve this 5-hour problem. And in fact, we will give you time to think of your own creative solutions a little later. But let me suggest a few things that teachers around the world are beginning to do with some success. First, let me remind you of the advice we gave you in Module 2. Within the classroom, make sure you are giving students enough time to practice. Don't fall into the common pattern of only teaching students language rules and lists, and then only testing them on those rules. Even with just 5 hours of instruction, make the most of them. Remember the phrase, learn a little, use it a lot. Second, help students believe that practicing a language is a normal and exciting possibility outside the classroom walls. This can be a challenge. Let me remind you of my own personal language learning experience. I had 5 years of Spanish classes growing up in Southern California. However, I never used any of that Spanish as soon as I walked out the class door. And I would have had such wonderful opportunities to use my Spanish if I had just made the connection between my class material and the real world outside. In fact, I had more opportunities than almost anyone I know. As I explained earlier, I have a mother who is a native Spanish speaker and a father who is a Spanish teacher. I had friends who were fluent in Spanish as well. I am certain all of these people would have been delighted if I had asked them to practice some of the Spanish I was learning in class. Perhaps you think I'm crazy, but it honestly never occurred to me to speak to my mother, my father, or my friends about the things I had learned in class. How can that be? Well, I think I would argue that the connection between academic life and real life, especially for young people, is often not clear. We often don't think about actually applying what we are learning, especially if we are not invited to do so. So your job, if you choose to accept it, is to invite students, to encourage students to step outside that door and use what they have learned. In the next video, we will talk about specific strategies to help you do this. I'll see you there. Welcome back to Teach English Now. In the last video, we talked about the problem of time and ways in which you can solve this problem by either increasing the amount of practice within the class or helping students recognize that language can be learned outside the classroom. Because I like to talk to students about using language outside the classroom, I like to use the metaphor of a door to help represent how a language is learned. To learn English, we have got to help students realize that language isn't in a book. It is on the other side of the door. Language isn't a dried up, useless thing found in a dusty book. It is a powerful, motivating, useful thing that can help you communicate and connect with people in fascinating ways, both in and out of a classroom. Now, students might look at you like you're crazy, but please insist that there are ways for them to use their English outside. For example, one way to help students use language outside the class is to encourage students to list their possible resources. Who do they know who speaks English? Who might be interested in speaking English with them? Having students simply recognize their own network is a powerful tool to help them analyze potential opportunities. It can help you as a teacher to know who the resources are as well. And you can always invite English speakers to your class to help create a stronger language learning community. After students have written down their list of resources, people, places, and things where they can use English, you can help them create language goals that will push them out of their comfort zones and give them time to think about where they might use their English. Another possibility is the creation of English clubs. These are places where students can go to speak freely and practice the forms they are using. In an English club environment, often students can watch movies or bring in music that they are interested in. Sometimes, students are paired so that they can engage in certain conversational topics. In one English club, a teacher transformed his classroom into a cafe, and students were able to enjoy snacks and order certain high-interest topics from different menus each week. Student exchanges are also powerful ways to help students connect to English outside of the classroom. A student exchange can involve a weekly pen pal assignment to another student from a different class, perhaps a class halfway around the world. There are so many English learners all over the world that would love to learn from your students, and having students write to those of a similar age can be a powerful way to connect students to the larger global society. There are hundreds of other ways teachers are trying to connect their students to opportunities outside of the classroom. We hope that our 3 ideas simply expand your mind to the possibilities of what you could do to encourage students to think outside the classroom box and start thinking about the doors that language can open. In the next video, we'll talk about how the internet and mobile devices are changing the way we see language learning and how we can use them to open a few more doors. See you next time. Welcome back to Teach English Now. No doubt you have heard of this little phenomenon called the internet. In fact, you are likely on a computer or mobile phone right now, watching me from the comforts of your own choosing. You could probably go to the refrigerator and eat some snacks. You can pause me whenever you want and check your email. Gone are the days when all learning had to be done in the classroom. The world has changed. The internet is an amazing tool that connects us together in a way that was never possible before. And for your students, there have never been more opportunities than now to learn and practice English outside the classroom. With just a few keystrokes and a few clicks, I can be transported to just about anywhere and find hundreds of different places where I can learn and practice English. But that can be just the problem. There are hundreds, thousands of websites and mobile apps to choose from. What can you do to help your learners engage in language learning on the internet and mobile devices? First, many schools are creating language learning labs, places where students can go and get help from professional language learning experts about websites designed just for them. Language labs also invest in special language learning programs that are tailor-fitted to your students' needs and interests. Second, since language labs will probably not be within your control, maybe a better option is to explore and discover websites and apps yourself that will help your language learners. While we won't endorse any one language learning website or product here, we will say that you should consider it a vital part of your teacher training to continually search for and review language learning websites and apps. Finally, students themselves, as they get older, will find that there are hundreds of websites that they can choose from in order to improve their English. As they become more advanced English speakers, they will start to see that they can improve their English simply by learning information anywhere on the internet. Movies, games, music, all of these are available on the internet and can provide valuable language practice for your learners. One more note. If you start to see that your learners would like to learn things that just happen to be in English, I'd like you to consider learning about content and language integrated learning, referred to as CLIL. In this particular style of classroom instruction, you can learn how to create lessons that teach any content, history, science, math, you name it, through English. Students who are interested in music history, for example, might love it if you prepared a lesson about the Beatles. You could get students to study their songs, read their stories, and talk about their favorite Beatle. Mine is Ringo. Above all, we hope you recognize the need for you to stay current and pay attention to the tools available on the internet and mobile devices. Get into the habit of finding out what students are downloading, what websites they visit in English, and again, don't be afraid of using the outside world of English inside your class. And don't you love feeling connected to the larger world outside? By the way, can I remind you that a great way to be connected to the outside world is also through a book? I have a library of books I love to lend to students. Let's not forget that technique and that old technology. I can't believe I almost didn't mention books. Man, has the world changed. See you next time on Teach English Now. Welcome back to Teach English Now. In the last few videos, we gave you specific strategies to help with a similar objective. As we stated before, your job is to engage students in English language outside of the classroom. But there's one final thought that I'd like to share that goes beyond the idea of just practicing more. In a very real sense, our jobs as teachers is to empower students so much that they no longer need us. Our goal as teachers is to, in a sense, work ourselves out of a job. I am sure you have heard the story of the mother bird that kicks the young birds out of the nest. The concept is very simple. A mother bird, after a while, recognizes that it is time for her birds, whom she loves, to fly on their own. She has nourished them. She has provided them shelter, and that is why she's kicking them out. It is time for you to go, little bird. I love you, and boop, I'm giving you the boot. And that is what we teachers must constantly think about. It should be a foundational principle upon which you build your teaching style. You must always recognize that your learners will leave you soon. and that the more skills and strategies you give them to help them fly on their own, the better. One of your primary goals as a teacher is to help learners gain autonomy. Autonomy, as you know, refers to the ability for someone to act without guidance. In language learning, it refers to the ability to move about in different contexts, such as visiting a country or writing a letter to a friend. It also refers to learners' ability to find resources and information quickly, such as knowing where to look for answers on the internet and just being able to communicate freely. Ultimately, you wish for learners to be empowered to go places, share ideas, and enjoy what it is like to be part of our global community. You want them to visit Australia and see the koalas, go to London and eat some fish and chips, and head on over to the United States and meet a Hollywood celebrity. Language is a passport that students can use in order to move freely about the world. And English is one of the most powerful of all languages in terms of the ability to interact with multiple cultures all over the world. Remember at the beginning of this MOOC that we said that a teacher was an actor? Well, let's flip that script today and say that students are the actors, acting for themselves because they are empowered, autonomous learners of a language, and they can express themselves, understand others, and participate in this global society. Thanks for watching.
You'll hear me say this a lot. You can't create in a vacuum. Designers are always looking around for inspiration from the outside world to help them inform their decisions and how they're going to approach a project. When I was in art school, and after that in a couple of other design shops, we always had a thing somewhere in the office called the morgue. The morgue was really just nothing more than a filing cabinet stuffed full of design ideas, tear-outs from magazines, menus, brochures, anything that we found that we thought was well designed, we would put in the morgue, categorize it, along with design annuals like print and communication arts. And we could refer to those later to get ideas on how to approach our projects and how to solve problems with type and color and photography. It wasn't a place to steal ideas, but it was a place that would help us see our projects through new eyes and get new ideas on how we could approach things. You know, if you're a writer, you can't write well if you don't read a lot. If you're a musician, you can't play music if you don't listen to a lot of music. It's the same with designers. We always have to be looking for other ideas, and the morgue was the place that we looked. These days, the morgue is an entirely different thing, and aren't we lucky? But the thing is, there's a lot of bad stuff in today's morgue. As you know, the internet is full of good things and bad things and in between things. It's not cherry-picked according to any kind of a system, unless you go to a design blog or you go to someone's Pinterest album. There are all sorts of things out there, and it's really hard to make the right judgments and to know where to look for inspiration. For instance, if I'm doing a PowerPoint presentation on muddy waters, the last place I'm going to look is on how other people approach PowerPoint presentations. I'm not going to do a Google search on PowerPoint templates, because my muddy waters presentation might look like everyone else's, and I don't want that. So thinking about how other people deal with PowerPoint, probably not how I want to think about my project. Instead, I might look at sources outside the box, sources that make sense. I might look at Rolling Stone magazine if I'm doing something on muddy waters, because Rolling Stone, of course, is devoted to music. The layout is edgy and beautiful, it's urban and gritty, and my Muddy Waters slides might look something more like you would see in Rolling Stone, that sensibility. And they certainly won't look like anyone else's PowerPoint presentations. That's what I'm after, inspiration. I call it the rectangle outside the box. If I'm creating a flyer for a music camp, I'm not going to look online at what other people have done with flyers, because my work will look like everyone else's. And again, that's not what I want. I don't want to look like everyone else. I want to look different. So instead, I might look at movie posters and get ideas for how movie posters have been designed over the years, what people do with type and photography, the sort of drama that we find in a movie poster. And my flyer now will look completely different. It will look like a flyer that has a sense of drama and invitation to it, and not like some template that just anyone can do and anyone can use. If I'm creating a poster, which I did at the University of Colorado, and I'm asking students to be more aware of computer safety issues like phishing and using strong passwords, and I worked with a student group on this project, we didn't look at what other people had done with computer safety posters because they all look kind of the same. We wanted something different. The students I worked with thought, you know what? Let's look at Chinese propaganda posters from the 1950s and 60s. That's what we did. And the poster they came up with was incredibly unusual and attention-getting and even a little alarming. It was perfect. So this all goes along with this idea of looking at the broader world of design before we even start a project. It's just part of design. And this is kind of a weird thing to say. When you're working on a project, think about the soul of the project, the heart of the message, not the medium that you're delivering it on. It's a really funny thing. When people think, I have to do a PowerPoint presentation, they think in PowerPoint. There's no reason to do that. Think about the soul of the message, what that means, and forget about the platform. I guarantee it will help you concentrate on the message, and it will help you do much better design work. So, like I've said before, you can't design in a vacuum. Look at the world around you before you start, and I guarantee you'll be happy you did.